and welcome to PSA Today. Let's talk. Today we'll be diving into the significant changes brought about by the two newly signed collective agreements. We will be unpacking salary agreements, early retirement packages, and the non-payment of DCS pay progression. I'm Angelica, and with me today is Joseph Mashigu and Stefan Viljoen. Welcome, gentlemen. Stefan, let's start with you. What will the salary increase be and how will it be implemented?
Good day, Angelica, and good day, members. So during the wage negotiation process that was undertook at the PSABC, we have concluded an agreement that will see the salary increase for this year being increased to 5.5%. It will also be a 3-year agreement, resulting in the year 2 and 3 receiving a projected CPI increase, also effective from April each year.
Joseph, Stefan mentioned a multi-term agreement. How did you arrive to that?
Okay, so as members would know that when the PSA tabled its demands, the demand was for a single term agreement. However, during the negotiations, the employer proposed a 3-year multi-term. Now, when the employer would propose a 3-year multi-term, usually they have to make it, it has to be worth it, so they have to buy the other 2 years. Now, in that, we then had to, somehow manage the risk of the other 2 years by keeping CPI between 4 and 6% in agreeing to the multi-term agreement. So therefore, it means for the 2 outer years, as much as it's CPI, that CPI has been kept between 4 and 6%.
Can you explain to us what exactly you mean when you say cap between 4 to 6%?
Okay, so what we mean is that because CPI is a variable that changes, no one would know for sure this time next year where will CPI be. It can only be projected, but we will not know for certain. So the reason we are keeping it is for the purpose of if CPI is to drop to 3% or 2.9%, members should not receive an increase that low. So we are now keeping it on 4% so that at least the minimum of what they get is 4%. However, then there's a higher cap, which is 6%, to manage the risk from the employer side, that they don't have to give an increase that is higher than 6%.
Stefan, with the cost of living rising each year, how will the housing allowance be increased?
So what we have concluded in the wage negotiation process is that the housing allowance will be increased from the current 1,784 Rand to 1,900 Rand, and that will be effective from the 1st of April 2025. We have also then concluded that from 1st of July there will be a further projected CPI increase on the housing allowance as well.
And then members previously complained that they are not able to access their individual linked savings when they are dismissed or when they resign. How did this collective agreement change that?
Yes, Angelica, that is correct. Currently, if any member resigns from the public service or are dismissed from the public service, they cannot access the savings money that was put away in the individual savings facility. So what we have concluded in the wage negotiation process was to say that anybody that from the 1st of April resigns from the public service or unfortunately will be dismissed will be able to access that savings fund.
Joseph, in terms of the medical aid subsidy, how will it be increased?
So what the employer has offered is that in terms of the first year, because by the time we concluded the negotiations, already the subsidy was implemented. So the subsidy of 5.9% has been implemented for the year 2025-2026. However, when it comes to 2026-2027, the employer has agreed to offer a subsidy of medical price index plus 0.5%. And for the year 2027-2028, the employer will also give medical price index plus 0.5%. So ordinarily, in terms of the signed agreement, the employer has to increase medical aid subsidy by medical price index annually. However, as a result of the negotiations now and the agreement that has been signed, for the 2 years that's going to follow in 2026 and 2027, there will be an additional 0.5% to the MPI.
Stefan, in terms of the danger allowance, will that also be increased?
Yes, the danger allowance will be increased to 650 Rand from the 1st of April 2025. That is just to uplift the base as a first initial increase. And then from the 1st of July, there will also be a further CPI-linked increase. Parties have then also agreed that allowance will annually be adjusted on the 1st of July. We also have got the special danger allowance, and that will be increased to 950 Rand from the 1st of April. And like the danger allowance, also on the 1st of July, there will be a further CPI increase, meaning that both of these allowances will receive 2 increases during the first year or in 2025, and then annually an adjustment on the 1st of July. We also have the allowance for police services that will be increased to 950 Rand, also effective from the 1st of April 2025, also with an increase then annually on the 1st of July.
Joseph, can you tell us more about the additional demands covered in this agreement?
So the additional demands beyond what we spoke to as what we will call substantive issues. The parties have agreed to sign 2 agreements. So one of the agreements deals with the substantive issues, which has to do with the cost of living adjustment as well as allowances, as Stefan has already outlined. But then now there's a second agreement that has been signed that deals with what we call process issues. Now these are issues that we cannot attain immediately, issues that require a form of a research, issues that require a process and engagements that will assist parties to come into a form of an agreement. That is inclusive of bursary for dependents of public servants, death grant. It also speaks to issues such as breastfeeding and childcare facilities in workplaces. So those are some of the issues that are captured in the second agreement that parties are going to then engage in various processes in order to reach an agreement.
How will these processes unfold? Can you maybe give us an example of one?
So an example, as I've already mentioned, the breastfeeding facility. A childcare breastfeeding facility is a facility that has to comply to certain safety and health standards. You would not, of course, just decide to give a room for mothers to breastfeed or for children to just be in that room. There has to be issues of privacy, especially maybe let's say mothers want to breastfeed or to express milk in the workplace. There must be issues of, whether it's done in a confined and an environment that has some level of privacy, but then also issues of hygiene, issues of safety, and also when you talk about childcare facility, that childcare facility must be friendly for the children. There must be control in terms of noise because it's in a workplace. There must be also issues of safety where the children will not just be stolen. So access into that particular place, who's accessing it, how is it monitored, and all of those things. So as it stands, most of our government buildings are not compliant in terms of that. So there has to be some level of research that is undertaken to look at the state of readiness, and if we are to establish such establishments in the in departments, what is required, and looking at issues of also adjustment to the infrastructure.
Stefan, Joseph mentioned a bursary scheme for public servants dependents. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so as the PSA, we are a strong advocate for tertiary qualification or education. We believe that enhances a person's future and career opportunities. So what is proposed currently with the bursary scheme is that we believe that the current public servants is part of what we call the missing middle. That they earn more, too much that they cannot qualify for the NSFAS funding, but they do not earn enough to be able to comfortably pay for tertiary qualification, accommodation fees and study material. And therefore we need to create this fund or some form of facility that will be able for public servants that they can access it and that their dependents or their children can be able to afford to go for tertiary qualifications. The proposal is currently that there must be an investigation being done to see if it's financially viable for the employer to be able to afford these bursaries so that public servants can access it and then send their children or their dependents to tertiary qualification.
Department of Correctional Services have not been paying the pay progression for their employees for the last 2 years. We have seen a communication from the PSA regarding a PSCBC enforcement order. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Angelica, this is correct. And there's 3 aspects to this question. One relates to the 2022-2023 financial year, in which the department have underpaid certain members. In the public service, we've got different salary levels, and between each salary level there's different salary notches. DCS, for example, qualifies for occupation-specific dispensation salary levels, and therefore the difference is 3% between the notches. What our members have realized in 2023 and 2024 financial year is to inform the PSA that those notches are not exactly 3%, and therefore in essence the employer have underpaid them. The PSA have raised it with the employer in the departmental bargaining chamber in an attempt to correct these salary notches, and then also to effect backdated payment for members that was underpaid. Unfortunately, the employer have not come to the party or to the table and implemented the correct salary notches, and that forced the PSA to approach the PSCBC for a compliance order to ensure that the employer comply with the collective agreement. I'm glad to inform to say that the PSCBC in January of 2025 have issued a compliance order forcing now the employer to comply with the collective agreement to correct these notches that was not correctly implemented, and also then to effect the payment to the affected employees. Currently we are waiting for the employer to provide us with a closed out report, meaning they must provide us to say which notches was affected, were these notches corrected, which employees were also affected by the underpayment, and have they also received their payment. So we are calling upon any PSA member to inform us if they believe they were negatively affected and the employer have not corrected their salary notches, so that we can take this up for them as well. The second aspect to this question is also then relating to the 2023 and 2024 financial year, in which the employer have decided not to pay any pay progression for any member. So they have not implemented pay progression at all during the financial year. Our compliance order at the PSCBC, or our dispute at the PSCBC, have also covered this financial year's non-payment by the employer. The pressure that we have put on to the employer in the dispute, and the fact that the PSCBC has issued a compliance order in favour of the PSA, has been that the employer have now issued a circular to say that by the 15th of March all pay progression must be paid. The PSA have, however, decided not to just leave it there. We will wait and see what's going to happen on the 15th of March if the employer is going to effect the payment, but we are still also continuing with our dispute process at the PSCBC, basically asking the PSCBC to make the compliance order now an order of court, so that if the employer do not implement this money on the 15th of March, that we can then start with an enforcement process, basically attaching government assets and utilizing the revenue from that to pay the affected employees. The third aspect to this matter then relates to all allowances that was paid during this term. So you'll see people, members in DCS receive standby allowance, danger allowance, or various other allowances, that if your notches was correctly paid, those notches would have been higher, and therefore your allowances should have also been higher. And this is the third aspect that we are asking the employer to also correct in the process, to make sure that people were paid on the correct level.
Lastly, before we wrap it up, Joseph, can you tell us more about the early retirement packages? What is currently being offered?
Okay, so the employer has recently tabled a proposal for offering public servants early retirement and voluntary exit. So basically that would mean for employees who would like to go on early retirement, who are 55 to 59 years old, those employees have been offered 2 weeks for the first 20 years of service, and then 1 week for every completed year. So basically what it means is that if a person has been working for 25 years, for instance, and they want to take the offer of early retirement, then that person would receive 2 weeks for the first 20 years, and then 1 week for every year in that 5 years, if it's a completed pensionable year. So basically it will amount to 7 weeks. Additional to that, the employer will then pay the whatever penalties that come with going on early retirement, because there are then penalties that you attract if you take early retirement, so the employer will absorb those penalties. Secondly, for those who are already at 60, between 60 years and 63 years, who would like to then take a voluntary exit offer that the employer is offering, the employer offers that if you take that voluntary exit, which of course you're already at pensionable age, so there are no penalties if you go on pension, but then you might then say, okay, I'm not going to wait for 65 years, but I would like to leave still at 60 or 61 or 62 or 3. So if that is the case, then the offer is that such members would receive 2 weeks for the first 10 years. So the first completed 10 years, it's 2 weeks worth of salary as incentive, and then 1 week of incentive for every completed year. So again, in an example of a person who has 25 years in the public service, so it will be 2 weeks then for that particular 10 years, the first 10 years, and then for the 15 years, then it means it's 1 week, so which means already you have about 15 weeks plus 2, which is 17 weeks of incentive as salary. So basically that is the offer that is currently on the table. The process is such that it's a consultation process which we are engaged, of course, to look at the modalities around that, the criteria, how are they going to give it to employees, because they are targeting 30,000 public servants in the next 2 years. The first year they want to have about 12,000 exits, and then the following year 18,000. But of course, if there are more applications from public servants of more than 12,000, how will they select? We have to look at also issues of critical posts and critical skills, so that as they allow people to exit, that we don't lose critical skills, or we don't lose people who are sitting in critical posts. And also, how fast are they going to recruit? Because what they are saying is that the reason they are offering these packages is because they want to now employ young people. But the question is, are they going to employ young people? Because already, the PSA has been raising a concern around capacity issues in the public service. So basically, but the offer is, as I've explained, but we still need to engage on other issues that are surrounding the whole issue of the offer.
Stefan, what will the implications be?
So the PSA is not necessarily for or against early retirement. We are more concerned about the implications on the public service. If you are reducing the public service by 30,000 plus employees, that would mean that a lot of services will be understaffed, or a lot of departments will be understaffed. There's no indication from the employer that they will be filling any of these vacancies, and that will result in somebody that's going to have to unfortunately perform 2 or 3 people's work. If you have a division with 5 people and 2 people have unfortunately taken up the early retirement position and the employer is not filling it, the workload that remains behind is going to be simply divided by the 3 people or the 2 people behind. And that is what we are mostly concerned about. Secondly, the PSA wants members to take an educated decision when they want to opt whether they want to take early retirement. Because once you've taken it, you are out of the system, unfortunately. It might sound good to take this initial offer from the employer now by enticing them to take a financial relief now. And as we are aware, much of our members are financially under constraints. But there's long-term financial implications for members if they haven't considered this correctly itself. If you take early retirement, it means that you had less years of service of contributing towards your pension or your pension fund itself. And then if you go in retirement with less years, it will mean that your monthly pension payout will be a lot less. So you'll have to have a reduction in your standard of living to accommodate the less pension money that you'll be receiving on a monthly basis. So we're asking members to consider that. Also taking into account with medical advances, people live a lot longer. And because people are getting older, we are getting a little bit more sick as well. So you're also going to need more money to be able to get out on a monthly basis to take care of yourself, to make sure that you are healthy, and if there's any medical conditions that crop up, that you will be able to pay for that. So therefore we just want to say to members, consider this carefully. Don't just look at the short-term financial gain now, but rather look at the long-term financial implications or risks that you have, and then make a careful decision.
That's all that we have time for today. Thank you, gentlemen. We hope you're feeling more informed and equipped with more knowledge about these 2 agreements. Please do not hesitate. If you have any questions or if you would just like to share your thoughts, please reach out to us at ask@PSA. Follow our WhatsApp channel for important information. Until next time, take care and stay informed.